The crash was the result of the pilot doing unsafe stunts in violation of safety regulations. But the story does not end there.
In 1968, a nuclear-armed bomber vanished without a trace over the Arctic. For decades, the United States insisted it was a tragic accident. But when a deep-sea drone found the plane intact, 230 miles off course, everything changed. Because what the wreck revealed wasn't just a lost flight, it was a hidden mission. Tonight, we investigate the wreck that was never meant to be found. The Cold War's ultimate gamble. January 17th, 1968. Thule Air Base, Greenland. The temperature hangs near minus 30 degrees Celsius as ice fog rolls across the runway. On the tarmac sits a B-52G Stratofortress with the call sign Hobo 28, preparing for another mission under one of the Cold War's most dangerous programs, Chrome Dome. The strategy was simple and terrifying. American bombers armed with live nuclear weapons stayed in the air around the clock, flying near Soviet territory. If a first strike ever came, these aircraft could retaliate instantly. No warning time, no need to scramble from vulnerable airfields. The deterrent was always airborne. Hobo 28 carried a crew of 7 experienced men. Captain John Haug commanded the flight. Major Alfred DeMario served as co-pilot. Captain Curtis Criss handled navigation, supported by radar, electronic warfare, and gunnery specialists. Chrome Dome missions demanded absolute precision. Crews flew through Arctic storms, often in radio silence, trusting instruments more than visibility. In the bomb bay sat 4 B-28 thermonuclear weapons. Each carried a yield of 1.1 megatons, roughly 70 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. At 9:30 local time, Hobo 28 lifted off into the Arctic sky. The patrol would last 24 hours, with 2 scheduled refuelings. It was supposed to be routine. It would be anything but. The disappearance. At 17:15, Hobo 28 sent a final transmission, "Fire on board." The message was distorted and abruptly cut off. Then, silence. Air traffic controllers tried to re-establish contact. Nothing. The bomber had vanished. Within hours, search and rescue operations were launched. Planes swept the skies. Naval vessels scoured the frigid seas. But not a single fragment was found. No wreckage, no life rafts, no beacons. 7 men and 4 thermonuclear bombs had disappeared without a trace. 3 days later, the Air Force released a vague statement: mechanical failure, presumed crash, recovery ongoing. They omitted any mention of nuclear weapons. That truth leaked anyway, and the resulting panic forced officials to confirm the worst. 4 hydrogen bombs were now lost at sea. But behind closed doors, the real concern wasn't just the missing weapons. Declassified radar data, hidden for decades, revealed that Hobo 28 had strayed 200 miles off course, flying in the wrong direction, far from its assigned patrol area. That deviation violated strict Cold War protocols. Chrome Dome bombers never deviated. Such a move would trigger alerts across both Soviet and American command systems. Hobo 28's sudden turn wasn't just a navigational error. It was the first sign that something far more unusual and dangerous was happening. The secret within the silence. The official story claimed the bomber crashed in deep water, too deep for recovery. No bodies, no wreckage, and no threat, the Air Force said. The weapons hadn't detonated. The fuel would disperse. There was nothing to fear. But for the families, there was no closure. Captain Haug's widow asked why her husband's route didn't match standard patrol patterns. Major DiMario's parents questioned why the search was called off without finding the crash site. The responses they received were bureaucratic dead ends. Classified mission, national security, no further details. Except the search didn't stop. It just went dark. Navy sonar scans continued for years, combing the wrong stretch of ocean. They found nothing. Either the wreck had shattered beyond recognition, or it wasn't there at all. Both possibilities were politically unacceptable. What no one publicly acknowledged was this: Hobo 28 wasn't on a routine Chrome Dome patrol. She had been designated a hardhead mission, a secret subset of flights involving faster arming nuclear weapons, enhanced communication systems, and manifests classified above top secret. Only select personnel knew these flights even existed. Hardhead missions were designed for rapid deployment, not just deterrence. Their bombers were equipped for long-range penetration into hostile territory. Their crews were specially briefed, their cargo bays weren't standard, and neither were their orders. Hobo 28 was carrying more than 4 bombs, and if anyone outside the mission knew what was really inside that aircraft, they never said a word. Not to the families, not to the search crews, not to the public.
The accidental discovery in 2019.
More than 50 years later, in July 2019, a Norwegian research team scanning the Arctic seafloor for climate data found something they weren't supposed to. They had deployed a Hugin-class autonomous underwater vehicle, a sleek, torpedo-shaped drone equipped with synthetic aperture sonar. Its job was to map terrain for glacial runoff modeling. But halfway through a grid sweep southwest of Thule Air Base, the sonar captured an anomaly, a 48-meter-long shape with a 56-meter wingspan, a B-52 Stratofortress. At a depth of 4,570 meters, roughly 15,000 feet, the bomber lay intact, upright, as if gently placed on the ocean floor. It was 230 miles off course from its last known position, nowhere near the official search area, nowhere near where it was supposed to be. The discovery triggered an immediate military response. Within 72 hours, United States and Norwegian naval ships sealed the area under a maritime exclusion zone. Civilian access was banned. A media blackout fell so fast that even the researchers didn't realize what they'd found until weeks later. The Pentagon released a vague statement acknowledging Cold War-era wreckage had been found. No mention of the bomber's name, no reference to weapons, no answers. The true significance lay in the wreck's location. Hobo 28 hadn't been returning to base when it went down. It had been flying in the opposite direction, straight into the vast, empty ocean, with no official purpose. Now, someone had finally found it. The wreck that shouldn't exist. The initial sonar images shocked marine archaeologists. The bomber wasn't shredded or scattered across the seafloor. It was whole. The fuselage was unbroken. The wings remained attached. It sat level on a flat seabed, nose pointed southwest. This wasn't the aftermath of a mid-air explosion or uncontrolled crash. It looked like a controlled ditching. That changed everything. If Hobo 28 ditched, the fire reported in the final radio transmission hadn't crippled the aircraft. The crew may have kept her aloft, found calm waters, and attempted a soft belly landing, a nearly impossible feat for a bomber that size. No bodies were ever found, but at that depth, in near-freezing, oxygen-starved water, human remains wouldn't last. The question wasn't what happened to the crew. The question was what happened next. The cargo bay doors were sealed shut, not just closed, welded with external reinforcement straps. That's not standard procedure. In an emergency, weapons are jettisoned immediately to reduce risk. Sealing the bay after dumping bombs serves no purpose, unless you weren't dumping bombs, unless something else was inside. Every detail pointed to a mission that had no intention of returning. The sealed bomb bay, the modified flight path, the intact wreckage resting far beyond its declared patrol zone. The aircraft didn't break up. It was flown carefully to that spot. And whatever it was carrying, someone went to extraordinary lengths to make sure it stayed sealed, hidden, and forgotten. Details the Pentagon doesn't want shared. When the United States Navy deployed a remotely operated vehicle to the site, it confirmed what the sonar had hinted. This was no standard bomber. The descent to 15,000 feet took 2 hours. Floodlights illuminated a wreck untouched for 51 years. The B-52's body showed corrosion, but it was structurally sound. The engines were still mounted, the wings intact. No signs of mid-air destruction. But the deeper the ROV looked, the more anomalies it found. The bomb bay doors weren't just sealed. They were reinforced with welded straps. No record of such a modification exists in any B-52 manual. It was a deliberate effort to lock the contents inside, permanently. Extra antenna mounts were discovered on the aft fuselage, suggesting high-frequency encrypted satellite gear, decades ahead of its time. Extended-range fuel tanks replaced weapon pods under the wings. Combined, these features proved one thing. Hobo 28 was flying a custom mission, not a patrol. The surrounding debris field was almost non-existent. No explosion, no breakup, no panic, just a bomber that ditched, sank, and sealed itself in silence. The ROV spent 3 days capturing images, testing metal, collecting seafloor samples. But at no point did it attempt to open the bomb bay. No tools, no cuts, just quiet documentation. The reason? The Pentagon knows. Revealing what's inside would expose the truth. So, instead it hides behind a claim of respect. The wreck may contain human remains. But at this depth, those remains would be long gone. What's really being protected is the cargo. Why the mission will never be acknowledged. The official manifest for Hobo 28 listed 4 B-28 thermonuclear weapons, cold weather gear, standard navigation systems, and enough fuel for a 24-hour patrol, nothing more. But the wreck told a different story, one of modifications absent from every logbook, of capabilities not listed in any Chrome Dome records. This wasn't a patrol aircraft, it was a delivery platform. A platform built for distance, secrecy, and containment. There was precedent. In 1966, a B-52 collided mid-air with a refueling tanker over Palomares, Spain. Nuclear bombs fell. One sank into the sea. Recovery was slow and humiliating. What most people never heard was that Palomares involved a hardhead mission, carrying not just bombs, but experimental Soviet radar sensors. Hobo 28 fits the same mold. Experts who studied Cold War special ops describe flights designed for plausible deniability. These bombers delivered classified cargo, inserted agents, or moved weapons-grade material between facilities, without paperwork. If anything went wrong, the plane would vanish, the story sanitized, and no one would admit the mission happened at all. That's what happened here. Everything about Hobo 28, the extended range, the satellite uplinks, the welded bomb bay, screams covert delivery. The crew likely knew little. These missions were tightly compartmentalized. Need to know only. If compromised, no traceable intel. Just a training flight that tragically disappeared. To this day, the manifest remains classified. Every FOIA request denied. Every appeal dismissed. National security, they say, even after 5 decades. Not because the danger remains, but because the truth still does. When grief met a wall of secrecy. When the wreck's discovery leaked, the families of the lost crew demanded answers. They wanted to know where their loved ones had really died, why the plane was so far off course, whether anything could be recovered. Every request was denied. The official reasoning? The site was too deep, access too dangerous. The wreck a war grave, best left undisturbed. But that wasn't the real reason. The truth was far more political. Allowing outside investigators to examine the site would expose the modifications and force explanations the Pentagon couldn't give. One widow filed a lawsuit demanding declassification of her husband's final mission. The government argued disclosure could still harm national security. The judge agreed. Appeals failed. The courts ruled. Secrecy outweighed grief. Meanwhile, researchers who had seen the initial sonar scans began asking questions. Why the sealed exclusion zone? Why treat this like no other Cold War wreck? The backlash was subtle but brutal. A journal that published leaked images was taken offline. The article deleted. The editor issued a retraction. The whistleblowing researcher was fired and blacklisted. This is how cover-ups work now. Not with silence, but with precision. Quiet pressure, legal stonewalling, and professional erasure. The wreck is still there. The bay is still sealed. The families are still waiting, but the system is built to make sure they never get an answer. Hobo 28 lies sealed at 15,000 feet. Her mission erased, her crew forgotten. But the wreck tells the real story. If you believe the truth matters, share this video, subscribe for more forgotten secrets, and let others know, not all Cold War ghosts stay buried.